Good morning. Were you just checking the raise hand feature?
Hey Maurice, it's Lily. I'm here. I'm just checking to make sure all's well with my technology.
You sound loud and clear. Can you hear me?
I can.
All right, we're ready to go.
Okay. Well, we're
Well, I mean, technically for you and I.
we're ready to go, but I don't think we have a quorum yet.
No,
So
not
a
yet.
second. Yes.
Good morning, all. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and
Yes,
clear.
we can.
Excellent. Thank you. Great. I'm really excited for the agenda today. I think it's going to be a great planning commission. So.
Good.
I believe we have quorum.
Okay.
All right, Maurice, I will go ahead and read the preamble. Good morning, everybody. In compliance with notification requirements of Ohio's open meeting law and section 101.021 of the codified ordinances of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of the City Planning Department conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. Abstentions from any vote due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to the taking of any vote. In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting has the opportunity to be heard, we ask that you use the raise hand feature before asking a question or making a comment. The raise hand feature can be found in the participants panel on the desktop and mobile version and activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait for the chair or facilitator to recognize you and be sure to select unmute and announce yourself before you speak. When finished speaking, please lower your hand by clicking on the raise hand icon again and mute your microphone. We will also be utilizing the chat feature to communicate with participants. The chat feature can be activated by clicking the chat button located on the bottom of the WebEx screen. Call-in users can unmute by using *6. All meeting activity is being recorded via the WebEx platform. These proceedings are also being live streamed via YouTube. All requests to speak on a particular matter via our website and email have been considered. We have also received emails from those who have provided written comments on a particular matter. Thank you.
Okay, Michael, let's call the roll.
Downing,
Present.
Luker,
Present.
Curry,
Present.
Trey Scott.
Okay, we have a quorum.
I'm not quite finished, Madam Chair. Paul
Present.
and Slife.
Present.
Yes, sorry. We have a quorum. We have a full house. How's that? Okay. First item is we have a few lot splits and consolidations, permanent parcel numbers 002-05-030 and -031. This is at 1370 and 1376 West 73rd Street. Is Joe here to speak to this?
Yes, I am. I am here. Good morning. How are you?
Okay. Wait, a question, if you go back, did we table this last time or it says we granted approval with conditions, so.
Yes.
Staff can provide an update on this.
Okay.
Michael Bozak, I'm going to call on you to explain why it's back before the commission.
Yes, of course. Madam Chair and to the commissioners, the applicant was required to give you a site plan to get approval for the lot splits, but you had requested a lot more information regarding that potential development. And that's detail that the applicant is simply not willing to go into at this time. They don't want to make that kind of investment of time and money. So they're looking to you to just get the lot split at this time. And then they're even thinking possibly about selling off the potential development site. So that's the background and why they're back right now.
So before we present, so what are you asking of us to do? I guess what's the ask of the commission?
To do a lot split, because I think for parcel B, it's going to be a substandard lot size. So I guess that is why we, have to kind of go through this process. Parcel B was never a big enough lot in general. This just weird 8-car garage that was on this plot of land just kind of merged the two, which is why we're trying to just separate it all in all. And we may be interested in developing, we just don't know yet. So we would just prefer to maybe get it subdivided, that way we can leave the tenants alone in the duplex and just let them not have to worry about people going on and off their property and stuff like that.
Okay, so, and I'm going to ask again. So the purpose though is to demolish the back part. I mean, historically, we don't do lot splits unless we know what the proposal is.
Okay.
But you're saying you're not ready we shared it with us before, but you're not ready to move forward with it?
Not yet, because I actually have a few, people I've been talking with, and not all of us have the same plan. There's certain people that have approached me as a partnership where, we were thinking about maybe even just building 2 houses rather than 4, and make them bigger houses. So we don't really know what is best yet for the community. But I think we're definitely leaning towards the 4 townhomes. That's kind of as to why we put that site plan together. Me and my architect worked on that, and we thought that would be a good use for the land.
I guess commission members, any other questions? I think it's really unusual to not come back when you know what the development is. Director Wong?
I'd like to call on Michael Bozak again to clarify, with regard to the substandard lot size and how that might impact this particular property owner, as well as the procedural background on lot split and, what is within the purview of the commission. So Michael, just to refer back, Chair Curry mentioned that historically they do look at site plans. And so wanted to kind of go back to the book to see what your thoughts were regarding
Right.
whether they can move ahead.
In the past, if I'm not mistaken, we've seen some very conceptual site plans for lot splits that were approved. The people were just putting some rectangles on a page and saying, this is what we think we might want to do. And it was when Tony Coyne was chairman. And I remember there was not a lot of debate about those particular concepts. The idea with the substandard lot is simply that we don't want to encourage such subdivisions that would be unlikely to have residential properties actually put on them. In this case, the house already exists. It's already substandard, so to speak, because it was attached to this huge garage area. But once you just put that property line where it would normally have been, it's already substandard. The other thing is that there's a lot of safeguards in place for as far as ownership and that goes with the lot splits. So by the time it gets through the Office of Surveys and Plats and goes through the county recording, there's a lot of safeguards in place to make sure that things are not going to be done in a haphazard fashion. Though we did see one a while ago that was a little weird, but in general, I'd say this is a very simple request here, and the fact that they want to develop on the land in the future is a good thing, not something to be concerned about at this time. So that's all I have.
Madam Chair, one of the reservations I have, quite frankly, is the fact that there are 2 existing structures and you're about to bifurcate or separate them. And my concern would be, are you adding any undue code requirements on either one of these structures as a result of that lot split? Because that could be an issue.
Good question, Madam Chair, if I may. I have all of these vetted through the Office of Plats and Surveys for that very reason. And they make sure that Building and Housing is okay with these before we move them forward to the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Bozak.
Madam Chair, we have a Mike with his hand raised.
Oh, yes, good morning. I am the architect working with Mr. Lanciotti on this project, well, on the lot split. And the goal is to also, so the existing duplex on parcel B, they are looking also to sell that duplex to help gain proceeds to potentially developing parcel A. And parcel A did have those 8 garages on it, which didn't even face 73rd. They faced 74th place. So they really weren't used by parcel B. And I think the best use of this would be to separate these two and use parcel A for future development and sell parcel B to help fund that project. Is there any other? I have nothing else to say on the matter.
Okay, thank you. Commission members, any comments or questions?
Well, Madam Chair, I believe I'm gonna trust the department's due diligence on this and suggest that we move to approve, or at least I'm moving to approve the plat as presented, with the caveat that all the proper protocol and procedures are maintained throughout the development of the project.
And with that, I'm in agreement with Commissioner Fruker, and I will second.
Okay. Any other comment, questions? I'm likely, just so you know, I'm going to likely vote no, because as a procedure, I don't want to see a whole lot of speculative lot splits and substandard lots come through that don't have a plan. I don't think it's a great practice. I don't agree that we historically allowed too many to come through. I know this is a different situation here, but I think that there are neighbors here. This is a dense development. There's very little due diligence on what might likely come here. This is speculative. And so, but with that, we can call the roll.
Downing,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry,
No.
McCray Scott, Paul,
Yes.
Slife.
No.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next item.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is another lot split, permanent parcel 112-17-081. This is at 15304 and 06 Lucknow. Demetrius Travis, are you here to present this one?
Yes,
Oh,
ma'am.
we tabled it. I apologize. We first need to remove it from the table. So can I have a motion to remove it from the table?
So moved to remove it from the table.
Second, Fluker.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Can we call the roll?
Downing,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
McCray Scott, Paul,
Yes.
Slife.
Yes.
Okay, it's removed from the table. Please go ahead.
Good morning. We are proposing a lot split. Currently, there's 2 houses on 1 land parcel. The screen that you see is the surveyor's portion that they provided with the property lines, which they have. There's 2 different entrances. So there's an entrance for parcel A, which is on Lucknow Avenue, for the first house. The second house, which is there's an entrance through Shiloh Avenue on the other street. So I'm proposing that the lots be split to 2 separate houses.
Okay.
So that is this is the first house in the front. And if you can see, the blue house is in the back. There is an entrance on Shiloh Avenue to that property. Which is right there.
Okay.
And so to alleviate, the people who live there now, they don't go through the front house to get to the back house. They just go through Shiloh, so it's not even really being used for that matter.
Okay. Commission members, questions?
Madam Chair, I think the issue here was the owner of the property, and that's why it was tabled, as I recall. Do we have are you now the owner, sir?
No, but I do have the owner on the phone.
State your name.
Okay.
State your name.
May, middle of the initial G, Harris.
Oh, you're the owner.
I'm the owner.
Okay.
And you agree with this proposal, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay. Commission members, any other questions or comments?
I move to approve lot split as presented.
And I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any other comments or questions? Okay, let's call the roll.
Downing,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
McCray Scott. Sorry,
Motion. McCray Scott, yes?
Yes.
got it. Paul,
Yes.
Slife.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much.
you.
The next item is lot split. This is, I won't read all the numbers here, but this is 007-1085 through 88. There's a 105 in there, so it's also in this number. This is on West 44th Street. Wesley Harper is here to present this.
Yes, good morning. Thanks for having me back on this project. Last time we spoke, we were here for a schematic design review, which we received, and then we had final approval from near. I'm here to the lot split. It's a topic that we didn't bring up the last time around, and I didn't notice it until late last week. So today I'm here to present the split of the apartment building relative to the parking in the rear. So here we have some context imagery. At the top left, we're looking to the northwest from Apple Avenue. At the upper right, we're looking to the northeast from Apple Avenue and West 44th. To the bottom left, looking towards Apple Avenue, and then the one on the bottom right looks to be a duplicate, basically. Next. So here's the current parcel layout. You can see we have 5 individual parcels. A handful of these were land bank lots, and so we've been working with the city direct to get these transferred to the developer, and they're looking to combine them and split them into this proposed configuration. Next. So basically what it is not facing 44th that has the apartment building, and then the parking lot to the east, which serves both the phase 1 of this project at the corner of 44th and Lorraine, and these apartments themselves. So it's gonna basically have 29 parking spaces, 2 ADA accessible. And again, they'd serve the retail component along Lorraine and that you see here. That's really all I have. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Commission members, any questions?
I'll move approval. Downing.
Second, McCray Scott.
We have a motion and a second. Can call the roll.
Downing,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
McCray Scott.
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Slife.
Yes.
A motion carries. Thank you very much, Wesley. Thank you. All right, design review cases for these matters. I'm going to need to swear everyone in. I believe the first one, August needs to recuse himself from. Is that correct, August?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay. Okay. This is East Design Review District 2022-014, 89th Rising Housing. This is on various lots. You can see the committee recommendations. There were some conditions on the design review, so please take a look at those as I swear in anyone who's going to speak to this matter. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, as you shall answer to the penalty of perjury?
I do. This is Katie VZ Gillette.
Okay. Anybody else on your team speaking?
I do. This is Tim Preamble.
Hi, Tim.
I may
Anyone
speak.
else? Okay. Thank you. Okay. So take it away.
Thank you. Tim has his raised hands. If we can go back to the previous slide, I do think there's one clarification we'd like to make before we begin our presentation, and that is in regard to the recommendations. It notes that they are approved with the following conditions. We've had some discussion after our appearance at design review, which was last Tuesday, and want to clarify, and if Nicole Calhoun is on the call, want to clarify that those were considerations and not necessarily conditions. So I don't know if this is something we want to address now or at the end of the presentation.
I mean, I think we'll ask for staff to comment and talk about what design review recommendations. So maybe as you're presenting, if there are any of these you want to address in the presentation, you could do that, and then we can talk about it at the end.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, good morning, Planning Commission members. Thank you for having us here today. I am Katie VZ Gillette, and joined by Tim Tramble, the developer with 89th We Rise Development. This project was before you about a month or so ago in the context of a zoning map amendment, and we appreciate your approval for that as it queues up this development. 89th Rising is located in the Fairfax neighborhood on East 89th Street on the block between Cedar Avenue and Quincy Avenue. Next slide, please. And as we know, the Fairfax neighborhood has an incredibly rich history. There are several landmark churches and institutions that still stand today, some that do not. And 89th Rising is looking to celebrate this history and restore a sense of grandeur representative of the Fairfax neighborhood on East 89th Street. Next slide, please. This particular block between Cedar and Quincy is anchored by two important institutions. There's the Boyd Funeral Home to the north and Caramoo House at the south end. Next slide, please. And the original concept for 89th Rising was developed about a decade ago. It was envisioned as an 8-unit multifamily building, but instead of looking like a small apartment building, it feels like more like a big house. This concept was supported by the neighborhood and included in the Fairfax Strategic Investment Plan, which was adopted in 2014. Next slide, please. One very exciting thing about this development is how it fits into the conversation about missing middle housing. Missing middle housing is a term with growing popularity, especially as our country's housing crisis worsens. Missing middle housing celebrates and encourages an eclectic mix of housing, kind of going back before single-family housing dominated American cities. And so what this enables, what 89th Rising does, it creates an opportunity to increase density, provide new mixed income housing opportunities on this street in this neighborhood, as well as developing vacant lots. Next slide, please. This map shows vacant properties owned by the City Land Bank and Fairfax Renaissance Development Corporation on East 89th Street. There are also a couple of other privately owned vacant lots that are not shown on this map. And in this particular neighborhood, on this particular street, there are some areas where the existing neighborhood fabric is incredibly strong and intact, and there's other areas where there are just large swaths of vacant land, as you can see from this map. And if you go to the next slide, These are some of the areas, again, where that fabric is very strong. Next slide. And then areas with large vacancy in the lots in the neighborhood fabric. Next slide, please. The overall development comprehensive vision for 89th Rising is to develop the majority of the vacant lots on this street. We've broken this down or approached this with two products or typologies. There are, I mentioned earlier, the 8-unit multifamily buildings, as well as new single-family homes that would include additional studio rentals. Over the last few months, we focused our efforts on what we're calling phase 1, which are the multifamily buildings, and they're labeled on this map here as site 1, site 2, site 3. Each of the sites is comprised of a pair of 8-unit buildings, so 16 units in total, and supportive parking. Next slide, please. The site plan, the typical site plan for each lot on the east side of the street, the sites 2 and 3, are nearly identical. The fronts of the buildings are aligned with the neighboring houses. There is a central drive that serves parking, both garage spaces and just off-street parking for each building. The drive and the parking will be permeable pavers to provide an attractive look and also help manage stormwater runoff. And the additional added benefit of the paver systems is that it'll help maximize usable green space on the lots themselves. A series of walks will lead to individual unit entrances, which are located off of large front porches that wrap the buildings. And the buildings themselves are each comprised of 4 one-bedroom flats on the first floor, and then 2-story, 2-bedroom townhomes above it. Next slide, please. Site 1 is on the west side of the street, and it's an adaptation of the other sites on the east side. The west side of the street has shallower lots. They're shallower by about 75 feet. So we had to make some adjustments. We're not able to accommodate garages, for example, and our green space in this case is on the sides of the buildings rather than in the rear of the lot. The next slide, please. Landscaping is intended to complement the building's architecture. Shrubs, perennials will frame the porches. Ornamental trees will add additional curb appeal. And we will be very intentional about preserving as many of the large trees as possible and planting new trees to replace any large trees that are removed on the site. This was probably the primary consideration that came up at design review last Tuesday. There was a request to provide additional shade trees along the sides of the parcels, along the sidewalks there. There was a request to provide a 3-year maintenance tree plan as part of our approval. So we are, you know, this is one item where we want to commit and, meet the city's goals in terms of tree preservation as much as we possibly can. But like many projects, we're balancing, bringing this development online with the budget realities. So we are absolutely committed to, making this as beautiful, preserving as many trees as we can, taking care of those trees, but just commit to and without fully vetting and studying and agreeing to providing more trees or investing in a maintenance plan. We would just like that to be a consideration rather than a condition of our approval. Next slide, please. The site lighting, our goal is to balance safety and security for the residents here, along with the residential context of the neighborhood. So we want to, we don't want to over illuminate, but we want to provide safe lighting. So lighting will be achieved by a combination of building mounted lighting that highlights building entrances, properly illuminates paths, as well as some parking lot lighting on poles. The lighting fixtures themselves will be relatively traditional styles to support the building's architecture, which you'll see in a few slides. Next slide, please. The fencing will be, oh, no, sorry, this is the lighting for the other side. Yep. The fencing will be limited to rear fencing in the perimeter of the yard, as well as dumpster enclosure. That was another comment that came up in our design review. Just a request to soften the dumpster enclosure as much as possible, possibly with landscaping, which, you know, we have to balance how we can quote unquote soften the dumpster. We are going to push it back slightly to provide some additional concrete for trash and service maintenance, and we'll explore what we might be able to do in terms of making that dumpster enclosure, you know, palatable, since it is on access with the drive. Next slide, please. And as we alluded to earlier, the architecture of 89th Rising is intended to give the feel of a large house rather than a multifamily building or a row house, so that despite its grander scale, it fits more seamlessly into the neighborhood. It takes inspiration from Fairfax's rich history, featuring more traditional forms and proportions. The porches are a primary feature, so they're elevated, thoughtfully detailed to add character, while also providing outdoor amenity and communal space. Materials will be a combination of masonry and stone, which are primarily focused on the front facade and porches. There's some precast accents. We have vinyl siding and windows, as well as trim details. Next slide, please. As you turn the corner, this is the side elevation here of the building we're calling the Olivet. The more expensive materials are reduced, but the landscaping porch details are maintained to provide a pleasant pedestrian experience. Next slide, please. And this is the side elevation of the other building, which we've called the Antioch. And there again, you can see how the materials sort of wrap the building. You also get a glimpse in both of these views of the garages, which will be complementary to the large buildings and, you know, functional in terms of housing cars. Next slide, please. The architecture of the buildings themselves will be the same between the three sites, but we will achieve variation through color and material selection to ensure that each structure is unique and identifiable on the street. So here you can see the palette for site 1. If you go to the next slide, you can see site 2, and the next one, site 3. So again, we've got, they'll all be very complementary, but unique selections there. And then the next slide. So we're very excited to introduce this development to East 89th Street and the Fairfax neighborhood. We hope it is something that's a start of something much bigger than just this block. So thank you for your time. I'm going to look at my notes really quickly to make sure that I covered all the those comments that came up at design review last week. I think I hit the major concerns. There was a request for photometrics, which we can provide upon request, and there was a couple comments on the side elevation about some additional study in detail in regard to a roof canopy over one of the doors and the bay detail on one of the side elevations, or I should say window detail on one of the side elevations. I'm sorry, I'm not able to hear you.
Yes, because I'm on mute.
There we go.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask if staff would like to say anything, or Tim or anyone, before we open it up to the commission, just to hear any staff comment about the design review comments or conditions.
Nicole, if you're on the line.
Yes, I'm
Please go ahead.
unmuted. I was just waiting for her to finish her sentence. Good morning, Commission. First things first. I did have a email transpire between Tim and myself about understanding the validity of the East Design Review Committee, that it is an advisory committee, and that the way our motion forms are set up, that we are always giving recommendations for what we believe is necessary for the project to be its best. And that any comments or any desire to change anything would come to the planning commission and then be explained, which is what the presenter just did, just addressing the issues that the East Design Review had suggested. Upon the presentation at the East Design Review, according to what I recorded, the presenter agreed with the said statements of the committee. The committee also opened up for any comments, which is what the Planning Commission does as well. There were no comments. And so what my response to Mr. Tramble was that you can always, chime in, which is what we open up the committee for, to go the conversation back and forward to get the best out of the project. And also, last thing, I did send an updated motion form because Mr. Tramble had showed me he had problems with the way it was written up, that these would be considerations and presented to the committee. So I took care of it as much as I could within reason, of course. So thank you.
Okay. Tim, would you like to say anything?
Yes, first, I want to thank Nicole for her outline. I want to also thank the council president for his support of the project, and I want to acknowledge Denise Van Leer of Fairfax Renaissance Development Corporation. She was the first person that I spoke to about doing this project on our street, and I committed to her that anything that I do would be an adoption of the Fairfax plan. And that's basically what this is. It took concept to reality. In regards to the comments or conditions in the local design review, I don't want to make a big issue out of it. It's just that I remember them being considerations, which is why I didn't make any comment. I would have appealed had I heard that they were conditioned. So maybe I heard it the wrong way. I did speak with Katie, and she agreed with me that she thought that the motion stated that we want you to consider these things and not that they were conditioned. But regardless to whether they were or weren't, as Nicole said, the project is being presented now, and I accept whatever the result is. I do want to just let the commission know that we have a block club, and it is not a very active block club. We'd be really good to have 7 members that show up to the block club. I attend the block club meetings faithfully, and I say that because for this project, I actually engaged the entire street and flyered the entire street and made sure that we had a meeting specific to this project. And we had over 30 people there at Kiramu. And after the Q&A, after the presentation and all of the questions and answers were addressed, I actually got a standing ovation from the residents about the project. So I just wanted to clarify that there has been engagement with my neighbors. This hasn't been something that I've done in a silo without engaging my neighbors. And I've received nothing but positive feedback from my neighbors in regards to the project. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Tim. I think Director Wong has her hand raised. Do you want to go first before we open it for the commission?
Absolutely. Well, I want to give a standing ovation to you, Mr. Preamble. Just really amazing, that you are investing in your own neighborhood. So thank you for putting forth this project. B, the housing typology is what we want to see more of. This is the type of the eightplex, creating that middle housing, the missing middle, creating opportunities for people to live in the neighborhood where they, what they want to come to as a new resident, but also if they want to stay in the neighborhood. And then also finally, just really wonderful work with regard to the context of the neighborhood and how you've maintained sort of that design and the typology. So I'm just excited to see this project come forward and hope to see more of these multiplex units all over Cleveland. Thank you.
Okay, commission members, I think we can, this is for final approval. So as you might have comments or questions, I think we can approve this as presented or with maybe some particular guidance around the considerations or conditions specifically, but we have the purview and the authority to do either. So I'm going to open it up to the commission members.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move for final approval and ask that the developer consider the comprehensive tree plan and the dumpster enclosure. But I want to be very specific about the word consider there. I think this is a wonderful project, and congratulations, Tim and the team, for bringing this forward. Can't wait to see it finished.
I second, and congratulations, Tim. It is an excellent project. It's beautiful.
And Madam Chair, before a vote, I just want to add to anybody else listening, I think that a lot of the projects that have come to us have many similarities. It's kind of what the trend of development in cities across the country, but this really harkens back to what Cleveland urbanism has been. And we've been told routinely that this type of project, doesn't really pencil out. It's tough to finance. So it's exciting to see that be proven untrue. And I personally love to see more projects like this. This is the kind of multifamily housing that built Cleveland, and I think that it should be continue to be the type of multi-family housing that sustains Cleveland.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second, and I think we'll take the vote. So just to clarify, this is final approval, and any other recommendations or others or considerations as was stated in the motion. And I echo everything everyone said about the project. It's phenomenal, and I think it will also lead the way for other people to come and learn from it, and hopefully continue to innovate around new typologies. So I think it also is going to be very important precedent-setting project to lead the way going forward. So can we call the roll?
Downing.
Yes.
Curry.
Yes.
McCray Scott.
Yes.
Hall.
Yes.
Life.
Yes.
Enthusiastic motion for yes. So thank you all. Thank you for the presentation. And we'll look forward to our tour when it opens to see how it is. So thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Next project. This is the Cleveland Clinic Cole Eye Institute expansion, seeking schematic approval. This is at 2022 East 105th Street. So I see a list of people here speaking. So anyone speaking from the project, either from the applicant or the design team, I'll swear you all in at once. I'll just need a raise your hand and a yes as I do it. So do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth as you shall answer to the penalty of perjury?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Good, a lot of yeses. This was for schematic approval. It was approved as presented at local, so take it away.
Hi, this is Travis Tyson. First, I want to thank the commission for the opportunity to present for the schematic approval this morning for our Cole Eye project expansion. We do have the project team with us this morning that's going to present the plans and the presentation. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Robert Boswick from Boswick Design.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to go off script and say what I really enjoy about city planning is seeing some really outstanding projects like the one in Fairfax. How wonderful to see things happening in this city like that. I'm Robert Bostwick. I'm managing partner at Bostwick Design Partnership, and we are the lead architect for Coal Institute expansion. I want to thank the chair and the committee members for reviewing this project this morning. Our focus is on the Coal Institute building and the immediate public realm surrounding it. And I have to say, I had the opportunity of presenting the original Coal Institute to Cleveland City Planning more than 25 years ago. And since then, the building has been a remarkable success. It's enabled Cleveland Clinic to improve access to really a hugely rapidly growing volume of patients. When we designed the original building, it was created to enhance patient experience, but also maximizing the efficiency of caregivers so they could manage this growing volume. It succeeded so well that today the building is serving so many more patients than it was designed to accommodate, but it's frankly, it's at its limit. And a significant expansion is needed to meet the growing demand in our region for what is really the highest quality of eye care. In addition to caring for more patients, though, the expansion will enable the Institute to expand its own capacity for research into the causes and cures of eye disease, but also their ability to teach future caregivers and especially future ophthalmologists. So I'm here this morning with my colleagues and collaborators, Brian Wall, Chris Meskey, and Bryce Huberts. And we're going to be, as mentioned, presenting our schematic level design. We received, I would say, very helpful feedback from Kim Scott's Euclid Corridor review yesterday. And this morning we have a short set of slides that we'd like to review with you quickly. And then we look forward to your thoughts. And we seek your schematic approval to proceed towards final design in the months ahead. So thank you. Brian?
So with that, I will go through the agenda and talk a little bit about what we're gonna do for the expansion. So you can see here for our location plan, everybody's pretty familiar with where the Cleveland Clinic campus is in relationship to downtown. It's just to the east of downtown. Next, please. The context in terms of the campus itself and where Coal expansion sits, it's at the northeast side of the campus. Next, please. And as we zoom in, it sits on the corner of Euclid and 105th Street. So you can see there at the top of the slide, the existing Coal building that Robert mentioned. He worked on the original building. And the addition will go to the south side of the building, in between the existing building, Cryle, and the Towsey Cancer Center. Next, please. I want to take a few minutes and talk about the way the new addition will relate to the urban fabric that is surrounding it and how you access the new addition and building. So on the east side of the building, off of East 105th Street, we'll have our main drop off for the building. The cars come in, they drop off the patients and visitors, and then the valet pick them up and take them to the places they need to park the cars. On the south side of the new addition, we have a one-way lane road that leads to the west, mostly for valet and for fire and ambulance access to the site. On the west side of the existing Coal, we are expanding the dock a bit. We'll zoom in there in a minute, but we are expanding the dock, and we're thinking really hard about the way that the landscape helps screen that. The new addition also supports the Green Mall that is in the middle of the page here, east of Cryle, south of the new addition, and north of Towsey Cancer Center. That will, in the end state, that will remain as it is now. Next slide. Chris?
Thank you, Brian. Thanks to the commission for having us today. we're going to go kind of in a counterclockwise motion, but we see that as we get up to the building in terms of landscape, that we have some critical zones that we want to for study, and that's how we've been approaching it thus far. So we'll start at the Euclid East 105th intersection and kind of end up over by the loading dock and the Euclid East 100th intersection. Next slide, please. So at this intersection, the clinic wanted to make sure that we were, because this project does kind of touch on that corner, and we have those edges, that we wanted to address that corner to really kind of complete it, because we have these neighboring properties at that intersection. Everybody is familiar with, you know, Ronald McDonald House and Hector Vega's large flowers and the little plaza space there. We also have Mount Sinai and the Walker Center, and each one really kind of presents some signage and you know, a special pedestrian area on each corner. So the proposal here is to do something very similar. We're just showing a little a small plaza area. We'll probably have some signage, monument signage, some identity and branding for the project. Next slide, please. Oh, and I did want to point out that we're hoping to we are very intentional about providing pedestrian access from the health line, and we have a pretty new transit waiting environment on the east edge there, so that we want to make sure that this project reaches out and is very accessible by foot to its community, and really kind of touches on those streetscape areas with accessible and welcoming pathways. I think Brian kind of discussed how the drop-off loop and entry works. This is a very important component to the project, because a lot of the patients coming in will have diminished vision. A lot of them will be dropped off by vehicle. So our hope was to create an entry sequence that where the landscaping not only respects a lot of the precedents set on other parts of the campus, but is also very high contrast, welcoming, and directs folks into the right place. And we're going to do that with hardscape as well. We're working with a healthcare consultant who's helping us understand how to design for folks with diminished vision. We want to always provide access for all abilities, but having those high contrast materials that really identify pedestrian ways and differences between the pedestrian paving and vehicular paving is especially important here. So we're looking at paver colors, smooth walkways, and again, just really high contrast landscaping to fit in with the campus, but also greet and welcome and direct people inward. Next slide, please. We have a kind of a transition area here where we have an overhang. This is kind of a spot where people are coming in from the mall. We have some walkways that cross that roadway there, and then we also have a you know, sort of a pass-through space along the south edge of the building. We have a slope here too. We have some grading considerations, so that we thought that this would just be an opportunity in terms of maintenance and in terms of aesthetic to do some very low ground covers. We are putting a preference on native and adaptive ground covers that are not invasive. That's always something you want to think about when you're selecting ground covers. So I think we've selected some that are going to work pretty well here, but they'll create some differences in texture, some interest, and a good aesthetic, but then still leave the building open from views. We have a lot of glazing on that south side. We want people inside to be able to see out onto the mall. Next slide, please. The West Discharge area, we are still working through how patients and staff will move through the space, but you know, we have some, the clinic has other courtyard areas that are very nice and usable. And we see this as being very similar too. We're actually in talking with our healthcare consultants, we talked about developing it really as a sensory garden. When we think about people with diminished vision, what are those other sentences that we can really play to? So we're looking at, you know, bamboo, it makes some nice sounds in the wind, plants that have, you know, lovely smell and texture. And then we are relocating a sculpture. It's currently underneath the overhead walkway. This is the Gordon Gund, who's obviously a blind sculptor. We're going to put it in a very prominent place where it will be visible from inside the building as cars are coming around the driveway and when you're out in this small garden space. Next slide, please. Back at this other intersection, we had kind of the same charge. It's maybe a little different than the other one, but we still have a lot of signage and wayfinding considerations. We think that this project really should address the streetscape here. And so there is some existing signage. We do propose adding some landscaping and really kind of thinking about how everything relates to those three other corners. Next slide, please. And then you'll see a row of trees up along the north property line. Currently today, there are some very aging I believe they're pine trees. And they really block the views into the campus. They're also just, I think they're encroaching the sidewalk a little bit too. So we are proposing removing those and continuing the long tree line of the sycamore trees that we have in place already. So we're going to kind of complete that streetscape there. Closer, and the loading dock will be expanded. So we're looking for ways of really screening it, but then also in keeping with, again, that design precedent. We've got a lot of linear geometric layouts in other parts of the campus. So we wanted to find unique ways of doing that, but with materials that were really kind of let that loading dock fade back from view and then bring views and interest really closer to the street and then direct it back to the building, but away from the loading dock. And I think that's next slide. I think that's it for landscape.
Yeah, so we wanted to walk quickly through the floor plans of the building just so you guys can get a sense of what we're doing inside the building. So what you see here is a base.
Brian, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We don't need too much on the interior. You can fly through. Just so you know, we don't.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'll quickly go through this just so you get a quick sense. So we have a basement that's connected to the existing building. Next slide. The importance of this, I think, Lillian, is the entry point into the building. There is an atrium that we're using as a gasket in between the existing and the new building, and that's where most of the visitors and patients will be coming into the building. Next slide. On the second floor, we have exam rooms, and there's connections back and forth between existing and new, and the atrium's multi-level. Next slide, please. Surgery will be on the third floor, again, a connector back to the existing building. And then finally, next slide, we will have a fourth floor where there's going to be offices and mechanical. When you see the exterior of the building, we're trying really hard to make sure that we keep all of the function and walls right up against the glass, so you can get some nice views out of the building and into the building. But you'll see that as Bryce goes through the following slides. Bryce.
If I could quickly interrupt, Brian, you know, just for the commissioner's benefit, there are no overnight patients, and it's all outpatient in this facility, just so your awareness.
Just a quick section of the building where how the new addition is marrying up with the existing building. We're trying to keep it around the same height of the existing, so it doesn't pronounce itself, over the existing. Go ahead, next, Bryce. Do you want to go through these?
Yeah, good morning. Thank you, Brian. Bryce Hubers from HTA. As Brian, Robert, and Chris mentioned earlier, the main emphasis has really been on elevating the visitor and staff experience, and even for the local community. This is the east facade, directly across of 105th. Previously, the main entrance to the Cole Center was on the south side, directly facing that mall, with a parking lot in between. Now, to embrace new patients and embrace the community, the main entrance has been relocated to the east side, much closer to mass transit and easier for wayfinding for those patients that have diminished vision, or for the people driving those patients into the building. Vehicular circulation is all along this side. There's a nice little ring loop with access back to 100th via for valet and fire trucks. Right away, you'll notice that the new addition has a much larger massing, a much larger presence on the site. And we're using the atrium in between to not only separate and respect the existing building, but to help bring those two programs together, the new and the old. And within that space is your main entry. So in the morning hours and late into the evening, that little entry point will become a glowing beacon for the local community. In the new addition, we have 3 ribbon windows that are running across the building, and those are echoing the language of the existing building, that very strong horizontality found in the Cole Center. Next, please. Based on the program distribution, we are able to provide a very generous drop-off covering underneath the building on the far east side, as shown in this drawing. That can help provide cover for 6+ vehicles. This is the side facing the mall. Lots of glazing to provide as much daylight as possible to penetrate deep into the building. Here, as Brian walked you through the plans, we have worked really hard to keep all of those partitions off of this facade to allow as much consistent lighting throughout the day and night to help have this facade glow. This facade also is directly across from Tausig with the large glass massing. So there's a nice similarity and balance to the space. Next, please. The west facade is rendered very similar to the east side. Those 3 linear window bands with the atrium extending all the way through as that wayfinding point inside the facility, with natural daylight and vegetation sprinkling in from the exterior. The expansion of the loading dock is growing to the north to provide 2 more bays as the addition requires more space. More material will need to ebb and flow through this dock. And then the landscaping that Chris presented is shown here in 3D to help reiterate that screening of the loading dock. Next, please. And this one's my favorite slide, because although this building has a very strong presence toward the Cleveland Clinic to help complete the missing tooth, per se, on the Cryo Mall side, to the community, this is a very small intrusion. It just peeks itself out just to provide access and wayfinding to that front door. If you recall the section that was shown earlier, we have depressed into the roof a location for the louver, for the mechanical system on level 4. So this building does not have a visible penthouse. but it has been integrated into the overall massing of the design. Because of that depressed penthouse, we are able to have almost 60% of our louvers hidden from out of sight. The other 50% would be hidden from the existing massing of the Cole-I Institute, as shown in this drawing. Next, please. So as you enter and turn the corner from Euclid to 105th, the building extends, announcing its presence and highlighting the main entry in between the existing building and the new addition.
Thank you, Bryce.
Thank you.
That concludes our overview of our schematic design. Thank you, and look forward to any comments.
Okay, thank you very much. Commission members, any questions or comments?
Yeah, I walk about 3 miles every day by the clinic, and there's a tremendous amount of pedestrian traffic that occurs. And I just like to thank you guys to try and consider how pedestrians move. This is such an auto-centric campus that sometimes we forget people, even employees, have to walk and navigate this. I wish the clinic could start looking at the streetscape throughout their entire campus to create a more engaging and inviting environment for pedestrians. Because I think it's greatly needed as they grow and as the community grows. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Any other comments or questions or motion? This is schematic approval.
I move approval for schematic design.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other comments? Okay, so let's call the roll.
Downing,
Yes.
Luker,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
McRae Scott,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Slife.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you very much, and we'll see you soon. For
Thank
final-
you, everyone.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Next item
Thank you.
is Flats Design Review, Fifth Third Bank signage, seeking final approval, 600 Superior Avenue. John here from Brilliant Electric Sign.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Chair people.
Okay, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth as you shall answer to the penalty of perjury?
I do.
Okay, it was approved as presented, but we should note that what is presented will require a variance, which is okay, but it was just noted here, so take it away.
Wonderful. Can we go to the first slide? We're presenting for 600 Superior Avenue for Fifth Third Bank, which is doing a new logo conversion. The isolation for the signage is mainly on the logo itself and not on the wall letters. Fifth Third Bank took over naming rights for the building back about 2005. So the signage package that we put together basically mirrors off of the 2005 and 2010 signage that was completed for Fifth Third. So for the slides that you have here, these were mainly put together by Shannon Leonard in regards to the variance per se, and it's as stated, we're replacing the existing signs with new signs, 501.6 square feet of total business identification signage for the 600 Superior Avenue. It is a new, vibrant, very nice looking logo that they're looking to achieve. So next slide.
If I may, excuse me, Chair Curry, we did have staff intending to go first, as Mr. McRae mentioned that there is kind of a larger discussion that we'd like to have about downtown signage. And so I'm wondering, actually, Mr. McRae, if you'd be willing to have Shannon propose and explain sort of the larger issue at hand, and then go into your presentation following that.
Certainly.
Would that be okay with you, Chair Curry?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, go ahead, Shannon.
Good morning, Shannon Leonard, Chief Zoning Planner, City Planning Commission. I'll walk through real quick the variances required for here. And so again, as you know, this is a rebranding. No matter how small of a variance or large of a variance required, it has to come before you all at Planning Commission. It's not something that can be administratively signed off because Planning Commission has that explicit authority to vary the sign code, which is typically done through the Board of Zoning Appeals. And really, you're just looking at design compatibility. You can vary the code either less strict or more strict if such variation will result in signage that is better suited to the design of the subject property or nearby properties. If it's in accordance with design guidelines that you guys have approved previously, and if it's the minimum variation necessary to ensure design compatibility. Next slide, please. And so again, this is wall business identification signage. It identifies the business, logo, etc. A wall sign is attached to a wall. Next slide, please. And so the proposed wall signs here are 2 high-rise logo signs measuring 312 square feet, 2 street-level logo signs, 162.86 square feet, 2 street-level halo signs, 41.58 square feet, and 2 small ID bank entrance signs, 6 square feet. This makes a total of 501.65 square feet. This doesn't include any type of information signage like Fifth Third parking garage or the multi-tenants signage that'll be proposed here soon. Next slide, please. And so really what's required is it's based on linear frontage of a building times 1.5 plus 25 equals the maximum square footage of wall or window signage in a retail district. So 325 square feet max. Because they have an additional frontage, they get an additional 50% of the max, a total of 487.5 square feet. So they're proposing 501. So really they just need a 14.15 square foot variance on the explicitly on the business identification signage. Next slide, please. And so the consideration here is, does it result in signage that is better suited? Does this result in signage that follows Planning Commission standard of approved design guidelines? And are these variances the minimum necessary? And so you're going to be seeing quite a bit of this as of late. You may have remembered a few years ago when I first started 5 years ago, this was a big thing, the upper level signage, as well as multi-tenant wall signage up the facades of buildings. And it was kind of, pushed away at that time. And the going trend was, when we have multi-tenant signage or high level signage, it was based on, are they the primary owner of the building, the primary tenant of the building, et cetera. And so what we've been seeing lately with the new administration change and our new urban design architect is in the last 6 weeks, just like an overabundance of people coming with multi-tenant signage. And so I think Allison would like to work with downtown owners and business owners and building owners on maybe trying to figure out some type of comprehensive sign package for these businesses. In the case of this, I believe the multi-tenants that they're going to show you here are the only multi-tenants that were guaranteed the rights to have access. Other building owners have been promising wall sign space, even though it goes against our zoning code and will require variance as like kind of a way to get office tenants back downtown. So that's just like an overview going forward. It might not be something you guys want to discuss today, but here before you is Fifth Third. They do need 14 square feet variance for just their business logo signage with an additional, I believe, 50 or 60 square feet for the additional tenant signage. And so the sign person can go forward discussing like further if you need the information regarding their signage.
Okay, thank you, Shannon.
Thank you, Shannon.
Okay. Director Wong, did you have something else to say?
Yeah, just to kind of wrap up Shannon's comments, working with the architect Allison Henney to create the sign package will reduce sort of signage all over and really have a more comprehensive, orderly way so that every building owner has the same template to follow with regard to signage and not have to also come before the commission every time for signs. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right, take it away.
Right. Wonderful. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, maybe next slide. Oh,
Maurice, I think this is where you have to exchange the slides to the other
Or go back.
presentation.
Yeah.
There we go. Sorry for a technical issue. There we go.
thank you very much. Okay. Do we have the previous slides available? This is getting towards the end of the. Yeah, if we could just roll backwards. There we go. There we go. I think we have one more potentially back. More or less a context map. Okay, this starts the presentation. So again, what we were mentioning before is Fifth Third took over naming rights in 2005. The signage is following the course of the 2005 and 2010 rebranding of the signage. So you'll see as we go through the package, we show you 2010 signage. We show you then the new signage they're looking to put in place, and we show at the end the 2005 signage in case there's any questions for that. So and that's for the Fifth Third portion of the presentation. So context map here showing the location of the building and also different vantage points where we took photos for representation of the signage that we have. So if we could go to the next slide, please. Again, additional photo spots that are being identified. Next slide, please. This is the rooftop east elevation, current signage from 4 different perspectives, just so that everybody gets a good idea of the look. The letters that you see in the upper right-hand side on top of the building, those letters are staying in place, are not being replaced. They are very, very close to the current branding, to the new branding signage script, so there is no need to go ahead and replace those in the package. The logos themselves are looking to be replaced. Next slide, please. This is a shot from the west elevation showing the same building context, giving an idea of how the high-rise structure and logo is placed. Next slide, please. This is lower level signage showing the north elevation for the main entrance, showing the current Fifth Third branding box. You'll see for the actual new signs, it takes more the form of the Fifth Third logo instead of having a box around the Fifth Third logo. Part of the rebranding also is the removal of the 2 swooshes that were left and right on the branding that you saw in the buildings. So that has been removed from their branding standards. So next slide, please. West elevation showing street level, same type of box sign that's over the entrance for that location. Next slide, please. Parking sign over off of I cannot remember the name of this road, but this is the sign for the parking garage. That sign's staying in place because it's identifying Fifth Third Center, which remains in place. Next slide, please. South elevation shots of the building, just giving you an idea of the letters that are not being changed. Next slide, please. This is our drawing for the Fifth Third Shield logo that we're putting in place, shown in place on the building, framed within the sign band that you see in the drawing for both the east and west elevation. The sign's internally illuminated, so all the lighting is coming from the face in the evening, is similar to what you have now up on the building. Next slide, please. This is a illuminated cabinet sign as well, replacing over the north and west elevations. Similar design to what you have obviously for the top of the building. Next slide, please. Fifth Third Bank letters being placed above the logo on the north and west elevations, similar to past approved letters. Those letters are replacement letters of old branding. Next slide, please. This Fifth Third plaque is down. These 2 plaques are down on the west elevation, similar to the plaques that are now in keeping with the plaques that are at the facility currently. On the north elevation, you have Fifth Third Center and also 600 address in the same kind of sign, but they remain because that remains to the building for the building itself. Next slide, please. Fifth Third Bank 2005, wanted to just show you some slides from here just for reference, showing the different vantage points and obviously the signage that was put in place in 2005. Next slide, please. And that might be the last slide. That's the last slide, okay. I'll field any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, John. Any questions from the commission? Or comments? I think if we have a motion, we'll need a motion to approve, including the variances required for this as well.
Madam Chair, I see Councilman McCormick with his hand raised.
Okay. Councilman, welcome.
Good morning,
Have
everybody.
you.
How are we doing?
Good morning. Good to have you.
Good morning.
Good to see you all too. I'll be very brief, Madam Chair. Number one, I support this in front of you today. I just wanted to make a 30-second comment on the overall signage conversation. And I'm an old man in this group and can look back on the time of some previous signage conversations too. So number one, I fully support as we move forward this body's review of this type of signage in the central business district. The only thing I just want us to always keep in mind is, really thinking about the competitive business climate we're in and being proud of the businesses that have chosen to locate in downtown Cleveland. I'm reminded of the Caxton building saga, which I will call it, where we had companies that moved in from the suburbs and wanted to replace an existing sign with their logos. And the gray hairs in my beard came from that situation, what the city required them to do. So I hope that's an outlier situation, but I just want to encourage all of us to, balance the importance of this review process and ensuring that, our buildings are not littered with signage with the, being proud of these businesses that have chosen downtown Cleveland as their home. So I look forward to participating in that conversation, but just want to make sure that we are balancing those two things and quite frankly, being proud of these companies that have chosen the core city for their business. So, Madam Chair, but with that, again, I support this specific project and look forward to engaging with Director Wong on that larger conversation.
Thank you, Councilman. Good to have you. Any other questions or comments from the commission?
I'll move approval, Madam Chair, with the consideration of the variance.
Okay. So including the variance.
Including the variance, excuse me.
Yep. Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Can we call the roll?
Downing,
Yes.
Luker,
Yes.
Hurry,
Yes.
McRae Scott,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Slife.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Mandatory referral. This is.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Designating Second Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church as a Cleveland landmark. We have here Margaret from the Restoration Society to present on this. I'm sure staff will present as well.
Madam Chair, Carl Brunges, Landmark staff. I'll introduce this and then Margaret Land will do this. This was nominated by the Cleveland Landmarks Commission on May 26, 22, and we received owner consent in writing. And Margaret has been helping the church through this process on this nomination. So I will turn this over to her for the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Planning Commission. Appreciate you reviewing our request here. I do have members of the church on the call as well in case there's any further questions or input. The Secondary Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church is interested in local designation. Next slide, please. The building itself was first constructed in 1922 for the Novi Zedek Lithuanian Jewish congregation. And at that time, this was the largest congregation in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood. Next slide. Here's a look at a 1927 historic map showing the neighborhood. At this point in Cleveland's history, the Jewish populations were concentrated in either the Glenville or Mount Pleasant neighborhoods. And in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood, it was really comprised of Eastern European Jews known for their work in the trades or blue collar positions. And these congregations tended to hold on to their Orthodox heritage. Next slide, please. Here is the context today. As you can see, much of the historic fabric around the church has been lost, making this more important than ever to preserve. Next slide, please. The church and the synagogue was designed by Polish immigrant Meyer Altschuld. He is a prolific architect in the Cleveland area, many commercial and apartment buildings spanning between 1914 and 1951. Pictured here are other buildings that were designed by the architect, former Communal Bath Association on Morrison Avenue, now the Morrison Avenue Baptist Church, and another synagogue on East 105th Street, now the Apostolic Faith Tabernacle Church. Next slide, please. In 1957, the Novi Zedek congregation merged and moved to Cleveland Heights, going east as so many other Cleveland Jewish congregations were doing at that time. The building was then sold to Second Tabernacle Baptist Church, a congregation that had been established in 1939. Due to redlining and other systemic racist practices, Cleveland's Black population often lived adjacent to Cleveland's Jewish population. And as the Jewish population began to move east, then African Americans began to purchase that available real estate, creating this pattern that we see across the city, where many Jewish synagogues have now become home to historically Black churches. Next slide, please. So just 2 years after moving into the former synagogue, the Second Tabernacle congregation was able to pay off half the mortgage and begin a series of remodeling that continued through the 1970s. And you can see here, many of these changes remain on the building today. Things like the ADA ramp, the side awning, the front porch portico, and notably the installation of the glass block crosses above the front entrance, which replaced Star of David stained glass windows. Next slide, please. On the interior, the sanctuary reflects its origins as a synagogue with pew seating on the main floor and then the gallery seating that surrounds 3 sides on the second floor. The church has removed the pews from the second floor to create a little bit more flexibility in the seating space there. Next slide, please. Additional changes which occurred to the structure in 1999 include plaster and paint throughout much of the building, new lighting in the sanctuary, the installation of central air, and new windows throughout the church. Next slide, please. The sanctuary also features this terrific baptismal that's positioned above the altar at the second level. This was originally a mikvah cleansing pool for the Jewish congregation, and Second Tabernacle adapted it into their baptismal. Next slide, please. Above that baptismal is the installation by Second Tabernacle of this beautiful stained glass window with the Christian imagery. Next slide, please. And then the basement of the church hosts a variety of community programs, many of which are for youth in the neighborhood, like Vacation Bible School, tutoring, and athletic programs. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, for 65 years, the Second Tabernacle Baptist Church has remained a steward of its worship space, while also responding to the community needs in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood. The 1922 building retains much of its original architecture when first constructed by the Lithuanian Jewish congregation, but it also reflects the cultural heritage of Second Tabernacle Baptist Church, specifically through the change in those windows from the Star of David to the cross and the conversion of the mikvah to a baptismal. This sacred structure on Union Avenue reflects the layered history and remains a tangible piece of Cleveland's Jewish and African American cultural heritage. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Questions or comments from the commission?
I move approval. Downing.
Second. Slide.
Motion and a second. Can you call the roll?
Madam Chair, before we continue, I just have a question. What's the end game? I guess again, this is new for me, so I really need to understand what the takeaway is for a church that might not have the capacity to maintain this structure and landmarking it. I need to understand the logic and rationale. Thank you.
The church is moving forward with a series of needed maintenance and repairs. They recently contracted for roof repair and some interior remodeling and repair. And they hope to actually expand the facility and their programming in the neighborhood. And so by becoming a local landmark, it does open the church up to some other funding streams.
I do have again, it's all about economics. I get it. And I've worked on a lot of restoration projects and church projects, but I guess my question is this a growing congregation? Is it stable? I mean, because a lot of times most of the churches around here have problems keeping the heat on. So I'm just, that's my concern. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do this, but I wanted to go on the record. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Can we call the roll?
Downing,
Yes.
Blucher,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
McCray Scott,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Blythe.
Yes.
Motion carries. I think we have administrative approvals next. And if you could just go through them slowly, one by one, and then we'll vote at the end. Oh, there is only one. So there you go. Can you go back to that one? We'll need a motion and a second on the administrative approvals.
I move approval. Downing.
Madam Chair, I do have a question. I wasn't there a bit of vagueness about this whole, maybe I missed it, but when it was originally introduced and it was taken off about this particular ordinance, was it directed at one person? I guess that's my question. Thank you.
I'm happy to jump in and explain what happened here. So yes, this was brought before the commission, I believe, before I started in January by Councilman Casey regarding parked recreational vehicles that are out maybe in front or on the driveway. The Department of City Planning, as well as the Department of Building and Housing, maintain that we believe this is a code enforcement issue, as the zoning code already provides this type of enforceability. However, because it was held at the Planning Commission in the staff department, Councilman Casey essentially said because anything that's held for over, I think, 30 or 45 days within the staff should move forward to council discussion. And so I have noted the contents of this particular ordinance in order to move it on to council by request of Councilman Casey, according to the rules of the City Planning Commission. Thank you. And we will be sure to discuss this in committee regarding the necessity of this particular legislation.
Thanks, Director Wong.
Thank you. Do you have a motion, a second?
I have a motion, but no second.
Second, Stami.
Any motion to move this forward to City Council? No second?
Second, Paul.
We got a second. Okay. Let's call the roll.
Downing,
Yes.
Fluker,
No.
Curry,
Yes.
McCray Scott,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Blythe.
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, we have a few special presentations. To the director, before we do these, can we prioritize any that need some kind of official approval? Or
Yes.
just to make sure? Yes.
Yes, so the Vision Zero action plan is before you for approval, as well as the mural for the public art presentation. So we will move the public art presentation before the other two presentations, which are informational. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Callie, are you here to present this Vision Zero action plan?
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm Callie Mersman, Senior Strategist for Transit and Mobility, and I'm joined by several members of our consultant team from Nelson Nygaard, including Drusilla Van Hingel, Marvin Reynoldson, and Brendan Ramon. Thank you for your time today. Next slide, please. And go ahead. So we're here today to share about the Vision Zero action plan, which has been in progress since 2020. Vision Zero is about eliminating serious injuries and fatalities from traffic crashes. So this is a safety plan for the city of Cleveland and our roadways. The contents of this presentation will follow the contents of the plan itself. So I'll go through some background information to set the stage. We'll talk about our strategic layout and then our implementation strategy to get it done. Next slide, please. So on average, our crash analysis has shown that 1 person a day is killed or seriously injured on streets just within the city of Cleveland from traffic crashes. And changing this, reducing that to 0, is the main mission of this plan. Next slide, please. It's customary for us in our Vision Zero task force meetings to take a brief moment of silence to honor and memorialize the lives that have been lost in the city. Last year, in 2021, we lost 74 people to traffic crashes across Cleveland. Their names and locations are here, and I'll just pause for 5 seconds to commemorate that loss. Next slide, please. This plan sets a bold vision of eliminating serious injuries and deaths from crashes on our streets in the city of Cleveland by 2032. And a little bit later in the slides, we'll see a trend line that shows that. This does involve significant reductions from our serious injuries and deaths from where we are today, but we believe it's possible through clear, measurable strategies. And ultimately, the vision is safe, healthy, and equitable mobility for everyone across the city. Next slide. This plan has been in progress with guidance from our Vision Zero task force, which includes members from several community organizations, residents, and city departments, as well as input from residents from across the city. This process has yielded 4 guiding principles that we will prioritize projects in communities most impacted by the consequences of traffic crashes, that will think big picture, considering how every decision we make will influence health and safety outcomes. This is a data-driven approach, so we use crash patterns and analysis of both crash reports and community members' reported concerns to prioritize spending and inform how we treat our streets through design and maintenance. And we will lead with equity. That includes engaging community members during project design and program development, and also focusing on where the data points us in terms of neighborhoods that have been most impacted by past exclusionary decisions. Next slide, please. In terms of an overview of this plan process, like I mentioned, we started the procurement and contracting in 2020, but really kicked off the public aspect of this Vision Zero action plan last summer, including a robust analysis of the crash records from 2016 to 2020 in the city of Cleveland. That's over 19,000 crashes that the consultant team combed through, identifying key trends. Our consultant team also included Seventh Hill and Bongiorno Consulting, who did policy scans for us and ethnographic research of residents in Cleveland and what general prototypical or typical experiences of different people moving through the city are like. We held 2 task force workshops throughout the course of this plan. First, to review our approach and the existing conditions, and second, to vet draft strategies and approaches, as well as 2 rounds of community engagement, which I'll get into a little bit later in the presentation. We were honored to host Karen Korb as a kickoff speaker. For this plan, Karen is a person who uses a wheelchair to get around and is an activist and advocate for safe mobility for all. Last winter, we shifted into the strategic planning, developing the vision and guiding statement that I just went through, and really starting to build out our goal and strategy framework for action to create safer streets. And for this spring and summer, we have shifted into the implementation phase, working to get it done, including prioritizing and phasing the goals and strategies that we have, and taking some early actions around neighborhood traffic calming, the Complete and Green Streets legislative reform that we've presented to you before, and other quick win actions. So we're here before you today to adopt this plan, and we'll be shifting even more into implementation momentum moving forward with the creation of working groups specifically aligned around key priorities in the action plan. Next slide, please. Vision Zero adopts a safe system approach to creating safe roadways. And there are several key principles that are inherent in this. Vision Zero is an international approach to street safety. And so this safe system approach is inherent in the programs that communities across the country are implementing and across the world are implementing to make streets safer. These principles are that we don't accept traffic deaths as a routine cost of moving around the city. People may make mistakes, but those shouldn't result in life-altering injuries or deaths. We physically are vulnerable, and so the kinetic energy and speed have really important impacts in terms of the severity of crashes when they do happen. I'll talk a little bit about speed later, but you'll see that that's a key trend going forward. We're in this together. This is a multidisciplinary approach that takes people from planners, design engineers, those who maintain the roadways, enforce laws, provide post-crash care, and the people using the system to make sure that we have a safe environment for people to move around. The fifth element is that safety is about being proactive. We have a lot of crash data, as I mentioned before, which provides a reactive or retrospective look on what has gone wrong on our roadway systems and what we need to do to fix it. But we also want to look forward and create safe roadways so that crashes don't have to happen. And that is inherent in the safe system approach. And finally, we are creating a redundant system of safety measures. So when we talk to residents about this and our task force and subcommittee members, we use this analogy of Swiss cheese. If you have only one slice of cheese, there are some holes, things will pass through that. But if we line up strategies stacked on top of each other, the likelihood that holes line up is reduced. And so in this analogy, if a potential crash, a serious or fatal crash, is the little piece trying to pass through the cheese, having overlapping strategies prevents that from resulting in serious injury or fatality. Next slide, please. So I'm going to go through quickly some highlights of that data analysis and the existing conditions analysis and some key insights that we learned from that. So the first thing is that speed is incredibly important in terms of the deadliness of crashes. Greater speeds lead to more death and serious injury in the case of crashes. And you can see that that is especially true for what we call vulnerable road users. Those are people on motorcycles, walking or using wheelchairs, or on bicycles or scooters. Next slide, please. Additionally, people walking, bicycling, and motorcycling are disproportionately killed. So they represent about 12% of overall crashes, but almost a third of deaths and serious injuries caused by crashes. I will note here that you'll see that 68% of our deaths and serious injuries are just people in cars. And so while there is a big focus on making streets safer for people walking, biking, and riding motorcycles, this is an initiative that increases safety for all road users, including the 2/3 of the people who have died or been seriously injured who were using their motor vehicles. Next slide, please. When we talk about bodies being fragile, I think this makes a little bit of sense, but we found that older pedestrians are overrepresented in fatalities and serious injuries. If you think about the fragility of all of us as humans, and then as we get older, we know that we become a little bit more vulnerable. When crashes happen of older people, 35% of pedestrians in fatal or serious injury crashes are people aged 50 to 69. Next slide, please. We also see some big inequities in crash results, both geographically, as we know Cleveland is a very segregated community. And so you can see the gray shading are census block groups where 50% or more of the residents identify as Black. There is a concentration on the east side of the city of serious injury and fatal crashes. But we also see in terms of the people involved in the crashes that people who are dying in Cleveland in crashes are predominantly Black people. And so there is a serious equity implication here, both in terms of geography as well as the impact and trauma on people's lives. Next slide, please. A final key takeaway from our crash analysis is that there are several 1-mile segments across the city of Cleveland where fatal and serious injury crashes are focused. Again, you'll see that this is concentrated on the east side of the city, and it's also concentrated on our multi-lane arterials. 71% of our fatal and serious injuries are on multi-lane arterials across the city, even though those account for only 14% of our roadway network. So when we talk about geographically where we're focusing for safety improvements, this segment map is a really good indicator of where we have problems, safety problems right now, and how we will move forward to address those. The dots in the last slide were people who died in traffic crashes. That's data from the coroner's office. This slide, the dots are interstate labels. So there is much more information on crash analysis in the existing conditions report, which is included as Appendix A of the overall action plan. Next slide, please. All right, in our first round of community engagement, we held 9 in-person meetings across the city. These were specifically targeted to meet people where they are in their lives in the community. So we did promote the meetings through council networks, through the Vision Zero task force and subcommittees. But these meetings were hosted in areas like rec centers where there were soccer games going on nearby, next to convenience stores on Saturday morning as people were coming in for their neighborhood shopping. And so we did get a lot of input from people that maybe had never heard of Vision Zero before, or were not sort of the usual suspects in terms of public engagement. We asked them about primary street safety concerns and their ideas for safer streets in Cleveland as part of our initial scan of the community and existing conditions. And what we heard is that there was a lot of concern about speeding vehicles, as well as personal safety and security. Next slide, please. So shifting gears a little bit to strategies, we took that body of knowledge and information that we had collected, both from the community, from task force input, and from crash analyses and our roadway conditions. Next slide, please. And shaped those into strategies aligned with these principles. Next slide, please. That are sorted into elements. So when we talk about a safe system approach for Vision Zero, we have 6 focus areas of elements. All of our goals, strategies, and actions are aligned in these buckets. Safe systems are about the overall structure, policies, and supports that create safer roadways. Safe speeds are about lowering speed limits, preventing crashes from having a life-altering impact by slowing speeds on Cleveland streets. In the Safe Streets area, we look at both our decision-making and capital investment priorities, as well as how we build streets, integrating safety into roadway projects. We've talked a lot about that with our Complete Streets initiative. Also, how we maintain and operate streets once they're constructed, and how the community understands and participates in our transportation project decisions. Safe People focuses on increasing knowledge, community support, and adoption of safe practices across all road users. Post-crash care is focused on first responders, the resources available to them, how we support people affected by crashes, and how we can learn from crashes, collect data, do post-crash audits to improve safety. And finally, Safe Vehicles works to ensure that public and private vehicles protect all road users. This can include things like regulations at the federal level that require safe technologies to be included, and that bicyclists and pedestrians are considered in technological innovations. It also plays to things like fleet specifications. What are we buying, and how does that impact safety on our roads? Next slide, please. So in terms of the overall structure of the action plan, we have those 6 main elements. Each of those elements contains the goals that we just went over. And then within those goals, there are specific strategies and very direct actions to advance safety on those fronts. Appendix A in the plan includes detailed information on that entire scaffolding and infrastructure of goals, strategies, and actions. Next slide, please. Next slide. So our plan includes a total of almost 200 specific actions within those elements. We have elevated and identified a little bit over 60 to decide where to start and to focus our initial energy on. And I'm going to go into that in a little bit more detail. Next slide, please. All right, so our second round of community engagement was similar to the first in that we tried to get input from people both who are really plugged into Vision Zero and have a lot of familiarity, but also from residents that just want safer streets and are not as plugged into the technical conversations around this issue. So we took the strategies, draft strategies and actions and asked community members to prioritize those based on some key areas, including mode shift, equity, data-driven priorities, systems change, and policy change, actions that impact decision-making, that reduce the severity of crashes, and that raise public awareness. And so we had a lot of conversations with community members about these different elements. I will say here that we tried very intentionally to integrate these safety strategies with broader goals like climate action and like mode shift in the plan. Research shows that communities that have fewer people driving cars are more safer. So the more that we can encourage people and enable people to take transit conveniently, to walk and bike where they need to go, are not only healthier communities physically for us, but also safer. So as we...
Now, sorry to interrupt you, but
Yes.
we may need you to get into the actions and
Sure.
the things that we need to adopt just because of we don't want to lose quorum. We still have quite a few agenda items, so
Okay.
please.
Okay,
Thank
next
you.
slide, please. So these are some examples of priority actions, right on time. We pulled one from each focus area to share with you today, but I'm happy to talk more about the priorities in the plan. For safe systems, a main focus is to look at peer cities to inform and create a city organizational structure for Vision Zero implementation. This is about integrating across all aspects of the city's work, and there are communities across the country that are leading on this work that we can learn from. In terms of safe speeds, we are working to develop and activate traffic calming programs and policies, learning from the speed table pilot that was launched earlier this year. For safe streets, we are going to be focused on implementing low cost and quick build safety improvements at high injury locations that you saw in those segments in the map I showed earlier. Safe People, a priority action, will be hosting policy rides and raising awareness with elected officials and decision makers. For post-crash care, we'll be developing multidisciplinary crash response teams to go to crash sites after crashes happen to audit them, collect data, and recommend improvements to prevent crashes in the future. And finally, for safe vehicles, we will be working on fleet specs for fleet managers, including the city, to adopt to influence procurement decisions around safer vehicles. Next slide, please. We will also be reporting out on this. I won't go through these in detail, but as some of you know, we have a complete and green streets annual report. I think in the future, we can expect to see a mobility annual report integrated with complete streets elements and Vision Zero elements together. Next slide, please. The plan also sets up a governance structure for this work. So we are establishing a Vision Zero cabinet comprised of city chiefs and directors to guide the work, integrate it across City Hall, and help us to address opportunities, barriers, and obstacles. The Vision Zero Task Force will continue. This is an advisory body serving sort of as a steering committee with internal and external partners to guide the work. And then Vision Zero working groups will be replacing our existing subcommittees, very focused and formed around priority actions to drive those forward. Next slide, please. The plan also includes a countermeasure toolbox that highlights design tools such as countermeasures to reduce speeds, to make intersections safer, and to improve lighting and access management. There are also policy changes that are recommended in this group and tools that could be at our disposal. Some cities have used things like automated enforcement to very effectively improve safety. We have some hurdles to that locally, but those are identified as the plan as things to explore. Next slide, please. This process also piloted a community engagement process. We chose Lee Road as one key segment here because construction is coming up soon. So this laid out a methodology for integrating safety early on in community decisions, taking input and using that to inform the project scope. The community engagement process established here will be used by the city to advance engagement along other highlighted 1 mile segments across the city. Next slide, please. I've mentioned a little bit about what we've accomplished already, and we have talked to you about many of these things in the past, so I won't linger here. I do want to acknowledge our staff members, Matt Moss and Drew Sarabian, for their really great work around data analysis and helping us to use crash data to prioritize key intersections and segments across the city. Next slide, please. All of this information is on our website, and we will be updating with plan documents in the coming weeks, so I encourage you to join us there. Next slide, please. This is our trend graph getting to 0. And final slide. I'll end by acknowledging the many task force members, community members, and staff that have participated in this effort and helped to shape it. Vision Zero Task Force originally convened in 2018, and so it's wonderful to have a roadmap for accelerated action here before you today. So we look forward to continuing to work with all these partners for safer streets in Cleveland.
Thank you. Commission members, any questions or comments? Or ideas or thoughts? I do have one question. Within this, is there a way for citizens also who've been in crashes to self-report? And I don't know if I missed that, but like my daughter was in a pretty serious accident in Shaker Square, and while she was waiting for the police with her friend and the others, the exact same crash happened twice, and it's something that right outside Edwin's, they say happens all the time because of the way the lights are not overhead, and she asked me the question, like, is there somewhere to really report this that someone would respond? And I said, I don't know that answer, right? So is there like a self-reporting for people who've either been in crashes or residents that, they know that this is a reoccurring thing?
Yes, we have what we call a close call form on the website. And when you get into that, you can either say an incident happened to me and I'm going to tell you about it, or we have an option for people, like often we hear from people, this almost happened to me, right? And so there's an option for people to report that there as well. And I think as we ramp up Vision Zero and raise awareness around it, there's certainly opportunity to promote that more. That same form is linked at Bike Cleveland's website, bikecleveland.org/report-it.
Okay. So it's at Bike Cleveland is where you would go.
It's we have cross-posted it a lot, so it's hosted on the city's page, but their link is easy to tell you.
Okay.
Madam Chair, just an observation. I think what I heard accurately is that there's a predominant amount of accidents in African American communities, neighborhoods. And I don't see on your task force any African American CDCs participating in this effort. So I just wanted you to articulate how you get to those folks and how they participate.
Thank you. That's an astute observation. We're working to create a mobility coalition across all CDCs that will feed into this work. And part of the work moving forward from the action plan is to look at our task force representation, evaluate where we have gaps, and make invitations to pull people in. I will say in the community engagement for the plan, we worked a lot with Union Mile CDC and others to host community meetings in those areas. And so that was an initial step in shifting our focus as we saw the crash patterns emerge.
Commission members, any other questions? I think we do need a motion. We need to adopt this plan. And so we will need a motion to adopt.
I move approval. Downing.
Second, Fluker.
Motion and a second. Can we call the roll?
Downing.
Yes.
Fluker.
Yes.
Curry.
Yes.
McCray Scott.
Yes.
Paul. believe Stami may have left.
Okay.
It's life.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. And thank you, Callie. This is excellent work, and we know how long you've been working on this, and the administration, it's a priority. And so we thank you for that. And we look forward also to the kind of small actions and steps that might seem small, but are going to be really mighty that come out of the gates for this. So thank you.
Thank you.
TOD policy, mass, oh, were we going to skip ahead to the items for
public art?
Yep, let's
That's
just go to
right.
those really fast and we can move through pretty quickly.
While we were getting there, I'll make some staff comments before Karis presents on the magnet mural on behalf of Tara Petrus, who is out of the office this week. Overall, she supports the thoughtfulness in creating a new and inspiring mural. It will replace an existing mural that is on the building. She's done extensive research with council members, CMSD, Oriana House, and the CDC to see if there is any significance to the existing mural and the existing artwork, and was able to find no owner to the mural and wasn't able to find significance. So she wanted to say that she does support the replacement of this particular mural. All right, take it away, Karis.
Thank you so much, Director, and hello, Commission. I'll go through this pretty quickly, but working with Magnet and their new location to add a mural to this building, as the Director mentioned, here is kind of a Google image, a little bit outdated as the playground equipment is actually going in and will be right adjacent to this. Next slide, please. Just to show a little bit of context. Next slide. So here's the location, the existing mural that was already mentioned. And again, the work at this location will include kind of a ramp and some playground equipment around this. But we're still working to add the mural to this location after the playground construction is complete. Next slide, please. The artist that has been located through a community process is Darius Stewart. Next slide. And this is the concept that the artist has created to match with Magnet's mission and vision. They really wanted to emphasize Black innovators, engineers, and manufacturers that have a connection to Cleveland and Ohio. And so these are portraits of folks that were inspiring to the artist. From left to right, Jerry Lawson, Ursula Burns, Mary Jackson. Actually, that fourth will be switched out for a portrait of Madam Walker. Garrett Morgan, Gwen Bluford, and then Shirley Ann Jackson. And the style will mimic the mural that was showed in the slide previously with this kind of watercolor effect. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions or comments?
I move approval. Downing.
Second, McCray Scott.
Oh, we have a motion and a second. I do have one question. Will it be lit?
That is a good question that I'm not positive of that of the
Might be a
lighting for
budget
this.
concern, but because of the directional nature of this towards Chester and how prominent it is, it could be really wonderful to light it so that how visible it would be, especially in the winter when it gets dark at 5 or 6 o'clock. So I would maybe suggest it's not part of the motion, but that they really consider some either just up lighting, ground lighting, up or down lighting of this mural because of the location. Anyway, that's it. We can call the roll.
Downing,
Yes.
Fluker,
Yes.
Curry,
Yes.
McCray Scott,
Yes.
Life.
Yes.
Motion carries. TOD policy update, Matt Moss.
Yes, this is Director Huang. I'm going to actually introduce this because we are joined today by several of our partners, and we're really excited about this. On the line, we have the Director of the Cuyahoga County Planning Commission, Mary Saribi, and Patrick Hewitt, also from the Cuyahoga County Planning Commission, along with Mandy Metcalf from RTA. And so before we dive into the Cleveland TOD policy analysis, wanted to sort of set the stage of how this all came about in partnership with the county, who has been doing a transit-oriented development zoning study for the county. And this is just highlighting one of the ways that we're all coordinating together to improve the city of Cleveland's built environment. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mary and Patrick if they wanted to say anything with regard to before the presentation and then go into the presentation.
Thank you, Director Wong, and good morning, Commission members and Madam Chair. I'm Mary Serby, Director of the County Planning Commission. This is an initiative that I'll let Patrick speak through, but we really are looking at how do we help prepare our communities in Cuyahoga County for transit-oriented development, specifically looking at zoning and land use and taking into consideration other projects that have been done and other work through NOAC and RTA. And we're proud to say that we've been very closely working with the City of Cleveland and in partnership with RTA. So from there, I will let Patrick take over. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mary. My name is Patrick Hewitt, Planning Manager with the Cuyahoga County Planning Commission. And on this slide, you can see a prime example of transit-oriented development right here in the City of Cleveland. Intro. We've been working with Matt, with GCRTA, with the City of Cleveland, as we've been undertaking this study, because Cleveland does have a number of examples of just incredibly successful transit-oriented development. Our project goal for this was to improve zoning regulations and governmental policies in order to attract more transit-oriented development to key corridors in Cuyahoga County. The County Planning Commission over the past 7 years or so has done master plans, corridor studies, etc., throughout the county, and realized that this was a goal and to see more transit-oriented development for many communities. But what we noted as part of that there are certain things that are missing. For instance, corridor-wide land use strategies, coordinated zoning across communities, and an incentive strategy that's multi-jurisdictional as well. Next slide, please. What we often tend to see when we look for transit-oriented development is this example. So this is Cedar at Taylor Road. And on the left, you can see kind of a traditional suburban development type where you see a one-story retail building set back behind parking with a single type of use in terms of retail, no residential, particularly focused on the automobile rather than pedestrians. Whereas on the right, you see a good example of, in this case, historic transit-oriented development. It's close to the street, it's dense with residential above retail. There is parking both on street and in the rear to the side in the correct location. So we see this type of uncoordinated development across communities. And we often find, especially as we're doing planning processes, that zoning in many communities requires what's on the left and often doesn't allow what's on the right. Next slide, please. So we've been working on a TOD zoning study in close coordination with the city as well as with GCRTA and in partnership with GCRTA. And we've outlined 4 phases. We're really just in the first right now, the state of transit-oriented development in Cuyahoga County, where we want to describe the importance of TOD and identify and quantify corridors and local examples. Heading forward, what we would like to do is work on an analysis of TOD zoning, looking at zoning along transit lines to understand where TOD is allowed and where it's not. We want to talk about model TOD zoning to come up with best practices that can be adopted by communities, and in some cases is already being worked on by communities like Cleveland that might be able to be shared with others as well. And then think about TOD financing strategies, looking at other mechanisms that might be able to be used that are being used locally or by other regions throughout the country. Next slide, please. We've taken a fairly broad look at TOD corridors throughout the county. So the map showcases the corridors that we're looking at. There's 22 of them that touch significant parts of 26 communities in Cuyahoga County. We came up with these by looking at frequent routes from GCRTA. We specifically then narrowed it down to active train and bus rapid transit routes, including some priority extensions of those bus rapid transit routes out into the suburbs. We also looked at the densest routes, thinking about population, housing, and job density, because those are places where transit can be most successful. And what we called social routes, thinking in terms of equity, we wanted to look at routes that serve communities of color, that also serve communities that don't have access to a vehicle or might be living under the poverty line. And finally, we looked at GCRTA priority routes that weren't otherwise covered based on GCRTA's work on their priority routes last year. Next slide, please. So we included walk sheds around the bus and train stops along the routes that we identified. We looked at a 1/4 mile walk shed around bus stops and a 1/2 mile walk shed around train stations to help us understand the state of transit-oriented development throughout the county in those walk sheds. We looked at 3 items. We looked at land use, zoning, and land cover. And there's a couple things that really stood out to us. So looking at land use, and this is generalized land use, 42% of land within the walk sheds of those transit corridors is being used for single family residential. Only 10% is being used, for instance, for commercial development. And that makes sense because when we looked at zoning, more than half, 53% of land within those transit corridors is zoned specifically for single family, which isn't necessarily a particularly dense or transit friendly type of development when we think about walkability and dense residential areas that can support transit use. And we looked at land cover using aerial imagery that we have from previous work, looked at what percentage of land is covered by certain items. So buildings, roads, parking, and green areas. Buildings only cover 17% of the land in those walk sheds, whereas parking and other paved areas covers 1/4, 25%. So more area is being used for parking than buildings along the corridors where we've invested in frequent and rapid transit. Next slide, please. And we've looked at recent development along these transit corridors and throughout the county. So this map showcases development between 2011 and 2022, added value from one year to the next, and specifically developments which added more than $1 million worth of value. Larger circles correspond with larger developments. Between 2011 and 2021, there's been more than $6 billion worth of added value in Cuyahoga County. In this map, you can see the bright green areas are added value within downtown Cleveland, and teal areas are added values within the walk sheds of those transit corridors. And in pink are developments that added value, but were outside of those transit corridors. Almost $3.5 billion has been invested in those TOD walk sheds. That's 57% of the total. On average, $310 million in TOD in added value has been invested in TOD areas annually during that time period. Next slide, please. So as we go through all of this data, as we've been working with Cleveland and with others, we've found some initial findings. So again, we've looked at 22 TOD corridors and 26 communities in those TOD walk sheds. More than $300 million has been invested annually, but that map showcases that it's been heavily concentrated in certain neighborhoods in certain areas. We know as we've been looking that just because there is an investment doesn't mean it's TOD. The design of new development heavily influences whether something conforms to the principles of TOD, and that can go quite a bit to do with the zoning that communities have. TOD corridors cover 19% of county land, but they are a concentration of 29% of jobs, 35% of population, and 54% of those living under the poverty line. And within those TOD corridors, we are using more land for parking than for building, and most of the land is zoned for single family development. So we know if we look at this that there remains significant opportunity to add density and development along TOD corridors that can support transit. It can also support the communities along those transit lines. Next slide. So just to close on mine end, thank you for the opportunity to talk today. Going forward, we already have a working group of 20 of those 26 communities and associated agencies. We will be doing some educational sessions in the coming weeks as we move towards detailed zoning analysis. And just a special and sincere thank you to Matt, especially from the city of Cleveland, who has been working with us very regularly, as well as I think Mary Beth and Mandy are on the call from GCRTA. We've had really significant and wonderful conversations that have really informed this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. I don't believe we're here for any adoption. This was for information, but if you haven't, there's any feedback from the commission. I have one comment and thought in the next phase. I think this is phenomenal. It's much needed, long overdue in terms of kind of policies and practices and really aligning our toolkit to make sure that we have more, not just TOD, but more walkable and transit users, so strengthening both. The one thing I'd like to see in the next phase is an analysis or a thought process around where our job creation incentives or our, I'll call them our incentives to locate businesses. I think there's a big misalignment between how both at the state, county, city, local level, we incentivize people to locate their businesses, and how we give, let's say, tax breaks or benefits or other types of incentives. And there's no correlation between either the size of that subsidy and the location along transit corridors or trunk lines, if you will, or where we might control land. So I would like a similar analysis or map of, if you can do it, of where we've actually put big subsidy. In the region, I think you got to look out Cuyahoga County or more in terms of how we've incentivized people to move out to the suburbs from a company or a job location point of view. And we need to think about a more of an alignment of the toolkit. That toolkit's still missing for me, which is the biggest driver. I want to see us say somehow that if you locate your business on a major trunk line of transit, bus transit, etc., that that there are more incentives for you to do that, and there's disincentives. So right now, I think that's missing from this. I'll stop there.
Yep. Thank you, Chair Curry. And that is really good. And we'll take that feedback in. I do want to share that there is actually a part 2 to this TOD that Matt Moss from the City of Cleveland is going to present. And Matt, if you could hit the highlights, and then we could pursue additional conversation then. And Matt, maybe you can integrate in Chair Curry's comments into the work that you've been doing as well.
Okay, I apologize. I didn't know there was more, and I know August has his hand up, but can you fly through? We really are going to run up against some time, so I apologize, but go ahead.
Yeah, I'm happy to go through this quickly, and we have actually a companion map to this that we can share publicly that you can digest at your leisure too afterwards. So again, thank you, Patrick. Thanks, Mary and Mary Beth and everyone else on the team. We have been developing this analysis in parallel with our work with the county and learning regional strategies, but also looking at Cleveland specifically. And so I'll reiterate some of the same stuff. Just the story map reiterates a lot of the same stuff that Patrick went over, but basically we start off with a simple definition of transit-oriented development. We wanted to share what FTA defines transit-oriented development to be. It's generally the same stuff that you're familiar with: commercial, residential, office. I think in Cleveland too, we would look to see how light manufacturing or some of those job centers, like you mentioned, Madam Chair, fit into TOD as well, since that's specific to our fabric in the city of Cleveland. And so we wanted to also talk about why transit-oriented development. And so this not only connects to Vision Zero. Transit-oriented streets are slower, and we want to also encourage people to mode shift to get out of cars if they want to. That's something we heard during our Vision Zero engagement. It was a desire to do that. TOD is often more accessible, both in terms of the neighborhoods it creates, but also the physical structures that are considered TOD. It can be more equitable in terms of providing access in a built environment for people who do not have access to cars, which is quite a significant portion of residents in Cleveland. It helps us achieve our climate goals, and it also helps us build a healthier city. And so Patrick gave you an overview of the state of TOD in the region. And so what does this actually look like in Cleveland? And so what this story map does is it digs into population and housing data as well as jobs data. And basically what we wanted to look at is, from one perspective, according to the FTA, one of the most essential parts of supporting high frequency transit or transit in general is population. You need people proximate to the routes that our transit authority is running service on in order to generate ridership and make that service useful. That basically creates a virtuous circle where more people are proximate, they're close to transit, more people ride it, more businesses want to locate, and it's basically an economic development engine at that point. And so this analysis looks at some recommended density levels for transit corridors, looking at our high frequency transit lines that are our major corridors in the city. Some of them are bus rapid transit lines, and some of those are also fixed rail locations. And FTA has done a study looking at transit routes across the country and found that generally there's a population density here of 25 to 35 units an acre. And so what we've done is done an analysis of the city using 30 units an acre as defining areas as transit supportive. And we made a map of Cleveland, and this uses the 2020 census data. It builds off of that by mapping these transit walksheds based on all the high frequency transit lines and the fixed rail stations in the city of Cleveland. Essentially, we consider the walksheds to be if you're within 5 minutes of a high frequency transit stop. Again, that's a bus stop or a fixed rail transit line. You can see here where the walksheds are, they're basically these green outlines. And this map colors census blocks based on how transit supportive they are based on that definition of transit supportive density. Right now, this is analyzing it at 30 units an acre as a goal. So if you see dark blue blocks, those blocks are at or above 30 units an acre, and that quickly drops off to census blocks that you see here that might be gray or white. And so what does this actually mean? And so we've done an analysis that not only shows all the census blocks, but it does all the neighborhoods, all of the statistical planning areas in the city of Cleveland. And I wanted to briefly talk about Detroit-Troy because we've looked at a lot of housing projects in the last few months in this neighborhood. And Detroit-Troy is also one of many neighborhoods in the city of Cleveland that is well served by high frequency transit. Roughly 80, or actually over 86% of its land area is within a 5-minute walk to a transit line on Detroit, Lorraine, or the Red Line at West 65th and Madison. And so there's roughly 815 acres of land within the high frequency walkshed. There's about 10,790 people living in there and about 6,000 housing units. But again, based on this analysis and this guidance from FTA, in order to be transit supportive, we would actually need almost 24,500 housing units. And so that would be an additional roughly 18,000 housing units within this walkshed to basically support the level of transit service that we're providing in this neighborhood. And if that's a daunting number, we've done some analysis and some math to count how many units roughly we've added to this neighborhood. And since 2015, we estimate there's been about almost 1,200 units added at various projects that we have reviewed as the Planning Commission and or the Landmarks Commission. Those projects are listed here. I won't go into them into detail, but this also doesn't include many of the single family or like the administrative approval housing developments that we've also reviewed. In addition to these projects, these blue outlines represent what we would consider to be development sites. These are either large vacant lots, large industrial sites that are no longer in active use, auto-oriented uses like surface parking lots, auto sales lots, places where no one currently lives that we could easily add housing. And some of these have been developed into many of the projects that we've reviewed today. One of the challenges that's one of the structural challenges to actually achieving this goal, if we want to be a more transit-oriented city and build transit-oriented communities, is our zoning code, which is something we have a large purview over in the Planning Commission. When we layer in a mask of the current zoning, these black areas represent areas where it's illegal to build more than 3 units of housing in the city of Cleveland. And so this is one reason why we've targeted parts of this neighborhood to be one of the pilot areas for the city's form-based code, which in many ways has a lot of transit-oriented development, a lot of supportive transit-oriented development elements in that code. And so in other words, in addition to zoning, what we want to do here is adopt and pilot the form-based code. That's a huge step we can take towards building more transit supportive communities. We can also identify city assets in various neighborhoods, including Detroit-Troy, where we could develop affordable housing and develop district parking. Parking is an asset, even in a transit-oriented development, in a transit-oriented community. And so being more thoughtful about that. This can be a partnership that we engage with the CDCs and city council to figure out where we can promote those areas. And then we also want to use tools like this story map to engage residents on the benefit and why we want to move our policy towards being transit supportive. And then last, we want to better track data on these projects so we can understand where we want to get to and how we're making that progress. And so, Madam Chair, this might speak to something you brought up. I think we still need to do more analysis on this, of course. But the other side of this is job location. And that's one reason, a large reason why people commute in the first place is to get to work. And so 2 of the largest job hubs in the state of Ohio are well served by high frequency transit. And so housing development or a business development that the city, the county, the state financial incentives are supporting these goals as well, like you said. And Another side of that is looking at how our review and approval process of projects, especially projects that we are participating in financially, can support transit with strategies like transportation demand management. And so these are a variety of strategies that encourage developers and project owners and businesses to buy transit passes, invest in transit waiting environments, that kind of thing. And that's some research that our Cleveland Foundation fellow, Michelle King, is currently working on and is doing a great job leading that effort. You can see here that this map shows the alignment of where we have quite a degree of population density relative to the rest of the city and where those employment centers are located. So this is really, these policies that we're exploring really support both sides of this equation. And so lastly, underlying all of this, we see really our TUD policies as fitting within the framework of supporting 15-minute cities. Transit is an important part of that in terms of connecting the grid we have in the city of Cleveland and the nodes of activity and the nodes of commercial and business development that we have that still exist even when they were built about 100 years ago. And so transit is an important part of that. But again, understanding that some of the structural hurdles that still exist, we need to, I think, aggressively move on if we want to really realize this vision. And again, this is representing areas where we can't build that level of transit supportive housing and population density that's really required to make this a really viable service for our communities.
Yes. Thanks, Matt. I know that you have much more strategies listed here. I am going to pause the discussion for now just so the commission can react, but this will all be publicly available as of end of today, we hope. So, you can peruse at your own leisure and read the rest of the content. So with that, over to you, Chair Curry.
Okay. Any other comments? We have one more small item after this, so we'll take any comments or questions, but maybe also ask that you come back and give us some updates as actions are developed. Commission members, anyone? The only thing I will say, it's very quick, is that I think you cannot look in a vacuum at the city of Cleveland as it relates to job centers and sprawls, as it relates to transit. So I do believe more context around the job and incentive alignment for me is larger than just the city. So that particular set of data needs to be expanded to understand the regional context, because otherwise it won't impact the city. Otherwise, that's a larger sprawl issue, in my opinion. All right, so we'll pause here. We'll have you come back anytime when we also have more time. To the director, we have a quick director's report.
We do have a quick vision for the Valley report. I just want to say that we're moving forward on it. And Matt and Shannon, if I could just briefly summarize, basically the next time we meet, we will have a text amendment for you, which is a waterfront text amendment saying that there is going to be a new setback along the riverfront so that no building can build right along the river's edge. And then other tools that we'll be employing is a new design review district that will consolidate the River Valley. Right now, the River Valley touches 3 different design review districts. And so by creating a new one, we'll have it focused just on the River Valley. And we anticipate that the review committee will be not just people from that immediate area, but because it's a regional and citywide asset, hoping to have committee members from all over the city of Cleveland represented. I hope I represented Matt and Shannon's well. We'll be back with legislation in front of you 2 weeks from now, but wanted to prime the pump that is coming and allow the public to also understand that we're working on that. Go ahead, Chair Curry. I see you have your hand raised.
I did not. I was going to clap, of which
okay.
I'm very excited about that one. So keep going.
Yes. All right. So I will keep going. This is the director's report. Just you saw this in the news earlier this week that we socialized some of our ARPA funds in docket 1. There are many different types of buckets. I'm just going to focus specifically on the ones that came out of our cluster integrated development, which includes planning, building and housing, community development, and economic development. And we are very excited about the receptivity that council had to these various funds, including gap financing for housing projects for that missing middle for affordable housing, $10 million for housing home repair for the residents of Cleveland, a revolving credit fund for minority businesses, specifically contractors. As we're doing all of this building, we think that we have, billions of dollars of investment. This is an opportunity to increase the supply of minority business contractors by providing that extra support, the credit enhancement to support their businesses. And then there's just some projects, funds around transformative real estate projects and transformative arts projects. And so we're really excited about that opportunity. You'll note that none of these are project specific, but rather these are funds that are meant to be strategic, leveraged, and transformative. Next slide, please. Just a brief update, several members of the administration also partnered with the Cuyahoga County folks. Cuyahoga County has been working actively on their Greenways plan, as you may be familiar with. And so we attended elected officials tour organized by Elaine Price at the county, where we looked at different neighborhoods where we anticipate supporting trail connections. So Euclid Beach and the Euclid Creek Greenway Trail for the metro parks in Collinwood, and then Morgana Run and Garfield Boulevard, which is Garfield Heights, but in Union Mile, Slavic Village, and North Broadway. So, we got our representatives there and council persons there to take a look at everything, again, in partnership with the county. Next slide, and the final slide, I believe. Some departmental updates. We did have a staff retreat this past Friday where we got out of the office, did team building, and really talked a lot about our mission, vision, goals, our structure, and really teamwork. And we anticipate in future commission meetings that we'll be able to share with you much more of our goals, both of the administration and our department, to help guide our discussions around the very agenda items that come before you. We did say farewell to Don Pettit, our landmark secretary, our beloved Donnie Landmarks, and on his final day, Mayor Bibb came up to give him his proclamation just for his 30+ years of service to the city of Cleveland and landmarks. And then we do have internships. We have 3 internships posted right now, including the Vision Zero internship to help support the work that Callie presented today. My final note is we want you to apply and come work with us. We are excited to have new folks joining this next month. I did want to add also that as a tag onto Complete and Green Streets and Vision Zero, that we have identified the Complete and Green Streets TAC committee members. So many thanks to all those of you who recommended folks. Those names will be posted later today, including our resident committee member, and we're really excited about the committee that's been assembled. So I think I finished just in time for Lillian to sign off. So with that, any comments? August has to go as well. Anyone else? I just thank you all for supporting the work of the administration, of the city, and all this. I know we ended up going a little longer than we thought, but these are all important updates and goals and agenda items. So we appreciate you all. And thanks to the county for joining us today, county planning.
Thank you for the partnership.
Yep, and RTA.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
I think we have lost both our chair and vice chair, so we will adjourn.
Thank you.
All right, thanks all.